Welcome to episode number 28. I'm excited about this one. It's one I've wanted to do for a while, but I still had this internal thing within me that feels weird about talking about it. And this episode is called My Relationship with Psilocybin. Now, what is psilocybin? What is it? Magic, mushrooms, shrooms, drugs, as society will tell us that they are. They have been a beautiful healing tool for me. I first started my relationship with psilocybin about 10 years ago. I was about 19. I was at my friend Brett's house in Australia. My friend Ahren was like, "Hey guys, I got some shrooms." And that's where it all started. So, 19 years old. I'm 19 years old. I'm pretty scared. I got a jiu-jitsu tournament the next day. And I just went through a breakup with my first great love, my first girlfriend that I really loved. And she ended the relationship with me. And I was in this weird kind of space where I was feeling quite confused. And we ate the mushrooms. I remember they tasted really, really gross. And we basically lied on the floor, probably about 7 or 8 of us, listening to different types of music. I remember Coldplay was playing at one point, and it was such a profound experience for me. I remember crying, thinking about the relationship that had just ended, and I just felt a lot of love at the time. I remember I felt like everything was okay. And I remember waking up the next day after that profound experience of feeling like everything was okay, like I was enough. And I didn't have any anxiety about the jiu-jitsu competition anymore. I had a lot of anxiousness, a lot of fear that was coming up for me. I was quite scared. And I woke up the next day and I was like, man, whatever happens is fine. It's whatever happens is what's supposed to happen. And I got second. I ended up losing on points to another one of my good friends, Jeff Dybing, who is now a black belt. He never stopped training jiu-jitsu. I stopped training jiu-jitsu for like what, 8, 9 years. He didn't stop. He's a black belt now. I had him in a triangle, and I remember he was almost going out, and he was looking at the clock, and he was beating me quite a lot on points. And I threw up a triangle, and then we ran out of time. And I just had no anxiety about anything. Then I took many years off, I would say, from ever touching them again. I don't know why. Just didn't go near them again for probably till I was in Canada. So I would have been about 21, turning 22. And it was probably the first week that I was in Canada. And I remember taking some mushrooms. I don't know how I got them. I don't remember how I got them. And this was more of an external experience where I was just looking at the mountains and they were changing shape and it was like, oh, the pretty colors, man. It's cool, whatever. A lot of people don't like talking about this subject or don't want to talk about it because there's still this taboo in society that these are drugs or these will mess your mind up. And that could not be further from the truth. If you want more information, if you want to explore what I just said, I would highly recommend the Netflix docuseries called How to Change Your Mind. He talks about 4 plant medicines, 4 healing psychedelics that are helping people right now. The first one is LSD. The second one is psilocybin. The third one is MDMA. And the fourth one is hawachuma, or the cacti, San Pedro or peyote. And it's such a taboo subject for many different reasons, but basically there was a war on drugs. It happened in the 60s when they were researching all this kind of stuff. They started noticing some very interesting things with people with PTSD, people with massive amounts of anxiety or trauma, people that had gone through sexual abuse or anything like that. And I still had that mindset. I remember feeling when I would take them, probably when I was like, what, 21, 22 in Canada. I remember this feeling of like that I was a druggie. But I always had these almost spiritual experiences where I felt very connected to everything. And then when you'd come down from that experience, or that would kind of phase out, you'd be like, oh, that was just stupid. You'd write it off as a dream almost, or you were just high. But there's a part of you every single time, like when I did that, up until probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I actually did it in a ceremonial way. Very different experience, and I'm going to go into that. But there was a part of me that was like, hey, man, you know, deep down that those experiences and those things that you saw and those feelings you felt and the breakthroughs you had were not a dream. And you can try and lie to yourself all you want, but deep down, you know the truth. And it wasn't till probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I did them again in a very different setting. Now, when you do them in a ceremonial setting, there's this saying called set and setting. Now, the set is your mindset going into it. And by the way, I'm going to say this many times, this podcast episode is strictly just my experience. I am not endorsing or telling anybody to do anything. Only you can explore that within yourself. And if anybody tries to push you into the plant medicine path and say that, oh, it'll be really good for you, and there's something in your body that tells you no, not yet, or no, I don't want to do that, listen to that part of your body that says no. There's also a flip side to that, is there might be part of you that says no because it'll bring up things that you don't want to deal with. So sometimes we don't know. I just want to say that because every person's journey is their own journey. But anyway, set and setting, your mindset, like what kind of mindset are you going into it? If you're going into these experiences with a mindset of like, okay, I want to take this particular plant or this particular substance, this being psilocybin, and I want to explore the things within myself. I want to explore that time. Like why, for me, I would sweat all the time underneath my armpits. I'm kind of a sweaty guy anyway, but it'd be like manic sweating. And it started when I was about 12 or 13. And it would just work up into this like hyper anxiety where I'd be anxious, so I would sweat, right? But then I would notice that I'm sweating, which made me feel very insecure and self-conscious, which would then ramp up this manic anxiety and made me, I was very unsafe. Like I felt like I wanted to rip my shirt off and like hide and just like rip my shirt off, change into another shirt and make sure nobody sees me, nobody notices me. I felt humiliated. I felt like that if anybody saw that I was sweating this much, it was crazy. Like if you're on the video right now, it'd be like to my sleeve, like the whole sleeve of this, it'd be all the way down, sometimes to my hip. It was crazy. It would get, and I would feel very humiliated, and I would feel like there's something wrong with me. And even when I talk about it now, I can feel this like kind of edge. That's our stuff, by the way. When you start talking about things and you find it like uncomfortable to talk about, there's something there. There's something there that you got to deal with. But that's one of the things that that was my mindset going into one of these experiences, into a ceremony. It was a men's ceremony. It was a men's group. And I remember like, I want to know why the fuck I sweat all the time. Like, why does this happen? Like to this point where it's just this hyper anxiety. So that was my mindset going into this first time where I used it in a ceremonial sense to look in myself rather than looking externally and wanting to see cool things with pretty colors. The second thing is the setting. Where are you doing psilocybin, or where are you doing whatever it may be? For me, I'm going to talk about psilocybin today. Where are you doing it? if you are doing it at a music festival or some kind of uncontrolled environment, that you're not gonna, there's gonna be a baseline of you that doesn't feel safe. You might feel safe if you're around certain people. I've done it at music festivals before. I had a great time. But if all of a sudden all your friends go missing and it's dark and then your phone dies, that could bring up some fears that could release some really fucking horrible things. I talk about it. I use this Lord of the Rings analogy. In the Lord of the Rings, the first one, there is this beast called the Balrog. Most people maybe don't know what it is. It's that big fiery demon thing that whips up its whip and catches Gandalf and ends up falling down and dying, as we think. Now, why did the Balrog come out originally? Why did that happen? It's because the dwarves that lived in that mine were so greedy and they dug into the earth too deep and they released this Balrog. Now, your trauma can be the same way if you do not have the right setting. Now, the right setting is a safe setting, a controlled setting. When I went to this men's group, the ceremonial men's group that I went to, it was very safe. We didn't have our phones. We put them away. There was facilitators. There was people with masters and PhDs, like in psychology and criminology. There's people that are smart. There's people that have been in this setting before. There's professionals that are helping you so you feel safe. It's in a very calm environment. There's a lot of talking before we even do that. Nothing happens for at least a day, and you talk about it and you feel safe and you do a lot of meditation. So you're in this very safe setting, right? Now, back to that Balrog analogy. If you're at a music festival, your phone dies, you lose all your friends, something weird starts to happen, that fear could trigger something kind of like the Balrog coming out. It's like a deep trauma you may not even know you fucking have. Like some kind of abuse or some kind of sexual abuse that might have happened. All of a sudden, you got this massive amount of fear and you're in this basically a different dimension because that's where it feels like it takes you. And it's like, oh, fucking fuck. So set and setting. They're the two most important things. So if somebody is very fearful and very scared and like it doesn't feel safe, and then they take some psilocybin, it might not be a fun experience for them because they don't feel safe. But when I first did it in a ceremonial sense, like I just said, I wanted to make sure I have mentioned that. When I first did it in a ceremonial sense, it was probably one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it has changed the way that I view of what it means to be a human being and what it means to I'll just try and describe it. It's so basically, I had this pain in my shoulder, in my scapula, between my scapula and my spine, this pain. And I thought it was an injury from jiu-jitsu, right? And I would get acupuncture and I got massage and I would put a lacrosse ball in it every night. And I did it all the time for months and months and months. And it didn't go away. Then I was like, you know what? I know that there's trauma that gets stored in the body. There's emotions that get stored in the body. I understood it from a conceptual point, but I had never felt it ever within myself. My intention, my setting, my mindset going into this experience, when I drank them, it was blended up into like a smoothie. I drank it and I was like, I want to know what is potentially trapped in there. Because I came to the conclusion at that point, all the physical things, all the things I've done, I came to the point that I'm like, this could be something else because I've done all the physical things. This could be a trapped trauma that is locked in my body. I remember when I first heard that, by the way, and some of you hearing that might be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Trapped trauma in my body? Yeah, I thought the same thing until what happened, which I'm about to describe, happened to me, which totally shifted my entire perspective. It's like you realize the world is round. It's like I realized that I was more than just a body. Like I am a spiritual being and I have a soul. I literally have seen my soul and have seen how we're all connected with every single person. And psilocybin has shown that to me. But anyway, I remember taking this drink and I was like, I want to know what is in there. What is in this part of my scapula? Like, what is it? I remember doing it and I was breathing, and the facilitator was helping us breathe and get into this really deep breathing where we were going in through the nose, really belly breathing quite fast, holotropic breathing. I don't know how long we did it for. And then it started to kind of kick in, and there's some music playing. And I started feeling rise. It's kind of like almost a sick feeling. It's kind of like, here we go. That's how it feels. And then I have a relationship with psilocybin where I can talk to it, because I've done it a lot. I've sat with psilocybin many, many times, sometimes a lot on my own. I've only sat with it 3 times in a ceremonial way. 3 times that are the most profound experiences. I can't even put it to words, but I'm going to try. I've integrated a lot of things I'm talking about, so I feel like I'm not losing the gold that I gained from it. But I took this psilocybin. I'm sitting there breathing, and it talked to me. It was like, "Are you sure you want to know what's in there?" I was like, "Yes." It's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes." So I go, "All right, buckle up, son." It's literally how it felt. It felt like it was like going up the top of a roller coaster, and it's just like, "Are you sure you want to take this plunge?" Yes. And all of a sudden, it's I'm gonna try and be sensitive of some people that are in my life. It's kind of hard to. Might as well just tell the truth. Fuck it. There was some abuse from my grandparents towards my father that I knew about, right? And all of a sudden, I see this view of my dad. He's like protecting something. And his mother in the background is like hitting him with a whip, and it's hitting him in the scapula, right where I'm sore, like right where I'm hurting. I was like, oh, that's fucking crazy. And it's like a camera, and it goes over his shoulder, and I see my mum. My dad is protecting my mum with his arms outstretched, trying to basically cover and protect them, while my grandmother is hitting my dad in the back with this whip. It's basically showing me generational trauma that can get passed down from my grandmother to my dad. My dad was never physically abusive. He loved me very much. He stopped that chain of generational trauma in its tracks. Anyway, protecting my mom, and my mom is looking over this beautiful little baby, and it's me. And I'm like, oh, whoa. This is like, I don't know, probably like 30 minutes in. And it was so profound. I was like, holy fuck, is this thing in my back not even mine? Is this from my grandmother? Holy shit. And then it was really bright light that was coming from this whip that my grandmother was hitting my dad with, through his back, in through his heart. And then the problem is it shot out the front. It shot out the front, and like this little spark, and it went into the baby. And I was watched it go into the baby. No matter how hard my dad protected the baby, the grandmother and her wrath and her anger still went into that baby. I was like, oh my God, it was horrible to watch. And then the psilocybin was like, yeah, that's part of what this thing is in your scapula. But what did that baby do? What did you do? I was like, oh shit. And then what it felt like is the level that I was on, that I was watching, disintegrated, fell apart. And then I fell. I felt like I was falling. Then I came into another level. And the next level was me holding my father as a baby, then holding my spouse, Lexi's mother, as a baby, and holding them and looking at them and be like, oh my God. It was very strange. I was holding my father and Lexi's mother as a baby. And I was like, okay. Then it it fell again. I kept on falling hundreds and hundreds of times. Each level would disintegrate. I'm going to speed up the story. Each level would disintegrate until all of a sudden I felt like I was a seed buried under 10 feet of fucking soil. And what the whole time I was using my breath as a guide. So sometimes I would hold my breath because the psilocybin would be like, I want you to hold your breath. Hold your breath now. And I would hold my breath, and then it would be like, okay, let your breath out. Let it out. And I would let it out. And then I would say, hold it, hold it, hold it, let it out, let it out, let it out. This whole time for hours and hours and hours. I got to this point where I felt like I was a seed, and it was like, hold your breath. I was like, oh shit. And I watched myself as a seed work my way through this soil. It felt like, if any of you have you swum too far down into a lake or an ocean, and you look up, it's like the opposite of the fear of heights. It's like, oh shit. And you have to get that breath of air. So I ended up, it felt like I was trying to swim through this soil. And all of a sudden I break through this soil. And it wasn't actually a soil at all. It was actually like a geode, like a gem, like a geode, like a bowl of rock. And I broke through this rock. And I was lying there. And I just remember seeing this beautiful world. It was kind of like Avatar. It was beautiful. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. And the psilocybin's like, yes, this is what you can enjoy. You can enjoy this beautiful feeling you're having. Do you like it? You've earned this. Look at all the work you did through this time. Look at all the things you dealt with. There was a lot that I didn't mention, a lot. But look at all the work you've done. And I was like, no, I've got to go back in. I've got to go back into the soil. And it's just like, don't you understand? You don't have to go back in there. It's like, no, I've got to go back in there because there's other people that have to break through that geode or break through being a seed and break through the soil. And the psilocybin was like, that's not your job. Your job is not to worry about your grandmother hitting your dad. Your job is not to carry your father or carry Lexi's mother or carry anybody. That's not your fucking job. And you've made that your job for most of your life. Why? Who asked you to do that? All you have to worry about is yourself. That was such a profound moment for me because I would always take on other people's shit. I've now named it Ahren Sherpa Services. It's like I was going through life with my own stuff, my own emotions, and I'd be like, you know what? I've got a backpack. Do you have some emotions that you want to vent, and I'll just carry it for you? Hey, put your shit in my backpack. People are like, okay, and then you know what? This isn't hard. I'll carry. How about I carry some of your emotional baggage, and I'll worry about people's financial situations that were friends of mine. I'd worry about people's relationship issues that were friends of mine, and I would just carry it. They never asked me to. I was like, I just thought I'd carry it too. It's like I'm walking with a backpack full of weight in there. Then I carry some kettlebells and I chuck a sled behind me. I'm like, you know what? This isn't hard enough. I might just. Where's an incline? Do you have an incline? It's not steep enough. Let's make it a hill. It's not steep enough. Got any fucking mountains that I could walk up with carrying all this shit that nobody asked me to carry? Things about my family, thinking that I need to be so fucking successful so I can support 3 generations above and 3 generations below. And I'm carrying all this stuff. I want to retire my parents. I want to do all this stuff. And just beating myself up all the time if I didn't achieve that, or if I didn't do that, or if I'm a fucking loser if I don't do any of that, and I'm not good enough, and blah, 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 blah. All the fucking stories and all the things I constructed just came crashing down because all I really needed to do was to focus on myself. That's what it showed me during that time. Let me sorry. There's people watching on YouTube. It got really weird with the lighting there, so I thought I'd just open it up. I remember coming out of that event and I was like, what had happened, what started to happen, which is this is the craziest part where I realized I am not just a body. That thing in my scapula was trapped energy. And my whole chest was convulsing up and down. And it felt like there was something, it felt like a lot of air. It felt like energy. And I never knew what energy felt like at that point. You can kind of feel energy leave your body. Very simple. I want you to practice this and you'll feel it straight away. Is you take a quick double inhale through your nose and then sigh out your mouth. It's a way of releasing anxiety if somebody's very anxious. So it's like, you can feel it instantly. You can feel energy. You can feel your body relaxed. You release a small, it's kind of like a blow-off valve or pressure on a cooker. Imagine that feeling, but times a million. And I could feel all this stuff. It felt like I was bouncing around in my chest. Then it went up into my throat and it sounded like a gurgling sound. And I was very scared, but then it would come out my mouth. And the best way to describe it would be the feeling after an orgasm, like this blissful feeling where I just was lying there. I was like, oh my God, I haven't felt so relaxed in such a long time. Then it felt like I was drawing poison out of my body. I was drawing this energy that was not supposed to be there, that was trapped in my scapula based on all this stuff that I'd carried for other people that nobody ever asked me to carry. And it was coming out. It was working its way through my body and coming out my mouth. Now, for some people I've seen, it's an emotion sometimes where it gets to the throat or gets to wherever and they start just bawling tears or screaming or laughing or whatever the trapped emotion is. But our emotions get trapped in our bodies. And you can release it through breath work. You can release it through plant medicine. You can release it in many different ways. But for me, a release feels like I usually deal with the emotions first, like a lot of crying or whatever, but then it kind of stirs it up like it's not frozen anymore. Like it kind of stirs it up. It's like, okay, here's this energy. And it comes out my mouth and I feel it through my body. It kind of bounces around my body, gets trapped in my throat, literally makes like this weird gurgling sound. It's crazy. It's hard to describe. It sounds absolutely nutty if you've never experienced anything like it. But I experienced it for the first time that day. And I've been forever changed since. To the point where last time I did psilocybin was the biggest release I've ever had. If you had have filmed it, it would have looked like I was possessed. I'm dead serious. You would have been like, what the fuck? I'm foaming at the mouth. There was all this stuff and I literally was dealing with all these things. It was wild, absolutely wild. And if anybody would like to talk to me about it, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's just so much. It's like you do 20 years of self-discovery in a 5-6 hour period. That's what it feels like. You go through everything. I went through my childhood. I remembered things. I remembered how people made me feel. I remembered that dude Taylor that kicked the shit out of me on the oval at Little Grove High School when I was about 9 years old and how that made me feel. And then I looked and the psilocybin showed me how that moment ripples through my life and how I trust other men. And the reason why I've been attracted to martial arts, because I don't want to ever feel that feeling again. It's like, holy fuck. Like, whoa, that one little thing that happened, it caused all of that? Really? Yep. Yeah, it did. And the psilocybin showed me that. Is it the psilocybin or is it just a higher version of myself? Is it God? I don't know. Kind of all three of them mixed together. That's what it feels like. Yeah, I've had some beautiful, beautiful experiences with it. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I should talk about it more. People want to hear this kind of shit. There's a lot of people that are suffering in this world. There's a lot of people with anxiety. There's a lot of people that every day they wake up and they're like, why am I like that in certain situations? And they shame themselves and they'll be like, Bob, why the fuck are you like that? Jill, why can't you just be normal? It's like, well, no, you got some shit that happened to you when you were younger that is weaving and working its way through your life that you need to go back to the root and deal with. And you need to deal with those emotions. And it's fucking really not fun sometimes. But on the other end of it, when you release it and you get this profound realizations, I don't manically sweat anymore underneath my armpits. unless I have a lot of coffee. I don't know. Coffee just is like, I don't know, it just makes me not the biggest fan of coffee on an empty stomach. I can have coffee maybe at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, but coffee on an empty stomach, no, not for me. It causes that feeling, that kind of hyper anxiety. But yeah, like psilocybin is my friend. I remember hearing Ram Dass say that in a podcast or an audio I listened to or a song I listened to. He said so he said psilocybin is my friend. And I was like, what is he talking about? I now can say the same thing. It has been a powerful ally to me and it is my friend. And every time I spend time with psilocybin, and I say spend time because it feels like a different being. It feels like it's a friend that is like, hey, buddy, grab my hand. This is not going to be fun at times, but I promise you, you're going to love the fucking end. You are going to love the end. This is going to be a crazy roller coaster, and it's going to feel at times like it's lasting 1,000 years because time isn't real. But at the end, just wait till the end. You're like, all right, oh, fuck. And there has to be a lot of trust, has to be a lot of surrendering. It literally feels like you're going to die at times, but it's just an ego death. It's a death of the structures and the stories that you have created to keep yourself safe all your life based on things that happened to you and based on ways you had to survive in that situation. Little version of you had this shit happen to you and you had to create a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism is now weaving its way through your life and causing problems sometimes. But if you get to the end of the movie is like, hey, you wouldn't be who you are today without any of those things happening. So you don't need to feel the shame. You don't need to feel the guilt. You don't need to feel the anxiety because you're enough exactly how you are and you're amazing. And you can be simultaneously horrified and grateful for all these things that have happened to you because you wouldn't be where you are right now with me dealing with this stuff. That's how it feels for me. And that's all I can speak from. But I look forward to spending time with psilocybin every time I spend time with it. I don't even know. It doesn't have a gender. Sometimes people say that certain plant medicines are masculine or feminine. For me, psilocybin, it doesn't have a sex or a gender or whatever. It's just, it's beyond that. You can't describe it. There's no structures around it that you can just say, put it in a box. You can't bottle it up and be like, this is it. But it has been a profound healing tool for me, and it feels good talking about it. I wish I had time. I mean, I do really have time to talk about the latest experience I went through because it made that first time where I released energy and dealt with things look like it makes it look pathetic, but it was not pathetic. It just makes it look very insignificant. Maybe I'll mention one thing is the time that I realized I had a soul. And I was like, I asked the psilocybin, I was like, do I have a soul? Because I hear people talk about this soul shit, and that sounds kind of weird and kind of gimmicky. And I think that I always used to think that people would be like, oh, it's just your soul. And they would talk like that, and they're very soft. And I was like, these people are kind of full of shit. That's literally what I thought. And I was deep in this psilocybin journey. I was weaving through it. It was beautiful. And I asked the psilocybin, I was like, do I have a soul? And it was like, oh, yeah. Do you want to see? I was like, yeah, okay. And the soul, that first little thing in my scapula, I can feel it all the time. It's always there. It's a guiding compass for me. That thing I released, it's like almost like it's like a wound. It's like a wound that's like in my scapula all the time. It's a kind of a reminder when I take on other people's bullshit or when I'm listening to something or somebody's venting to me and I don't have the space within myself right now to deal with their stuff, it starts throbbing. I have a compass in my body that guides me not to take on other people's bullshit. I'm not saying I'm not compassionate, I'm not empathetic, but there's sometimes I'm dealing with stuff within my own life, and it's a guy that's like, hey man, you're taking on their stuff. That's not yours. And it literally starts to throb and starts to have this pain in my scapula right here, right there, just below my trap. And the psilocybin went into that. It kind of went into it again. Then it expanded, and I saw this big, giant blue like dome. It was like a pod almost. And it said, and it like zoomed in, and it zoomed into like the wound. It's like, hey, you see this? Your traumas are the knots in your soul. I was like, what does that mean? It's like every time you release and deal with something that happened in your past, your soul can move along the pathway of what you were put on this earth to do. If you don't deal with these traumas, these things that happened in your childhood, you remain stuck. And that is disrespectful to your soul, and it's disrespectful to why you're here on earth. And I was in my own little pod like this. But at the top of it, you can probably see this. Hopefully you watch this on YouTube. It was shaped like this. At the top of it, there was this little opening. And I went up through the opening, and there was this basically vast ocean. It was like an ocean of souls. And that ocean was connected to billions of other souls on it, billions and billions of other souls, not in just this dimension, but an infinite amount of dimensions. And I asked to see, I was like, is there more? It's like, oh, you want to watch it? And it would zoom out hundreds, billions of times. It was like a grain of sand on a beach. This entire ocean that I was seeing with the entire world's population, it would zoom out, and that would be like a grain of sand on a beach. And then it would zoom out of that entire universe, and it did it millions of times to the point where I was like, please stop. I can't handle it anymore. Stop. This is too much. I felt like my brain was melting. It was too much for me to handle. It was the vastness of that is too great for me to handle, and I'm not supposed to handle it because I'm not God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And then I zoomed back into my little pod, and I felt kind of better again. I was like, holy shit. And it said, see that pod over there? I was like, yeah. It's like, that's Lexi. That's your spouse. It could be anybody. It could be anybody in your life. Doesn't matter. But this is what it said to me. It's like, that's Lexi. If you try and take on things that she's supposed to deal with, or try to make her life easier, or try to do things or shield her from feeling any negative emotions, whether it's sadness, anger, disappointment, whatever it may be, if you try to take that on for her, you're disrespecting her soul. And you're not allowing her to move through the traumas, which is the knots that are keeping her soul stuck in its current place that it's supposed to be. It's not allowing her to return to where she's supposed to be and fulfill why she's on this earth. Do you understand that? I was like, yes. Yes, I do. That was probably one of the most profound experiences. And that's just one way of describing it. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. I've told some people about this, but you got to be very careful. And I'm talking about it now. And some of you will do this. Because it makes you uncomfortable, what I just said, and because you don't understand, I know it to be true. It is a deep knowing truth within me. I know it to be true. You cannot tell me it's not true because I know it to be true. Oh, well, you were just high. You were just on mushrooms. No, I just saw the truth. The truth that is always there for people to see. Some people come across that truth by sitting on a mountain meditating for 20 years. There's other ways to come across the truth, and I came across the truth and I can't go back. It's like, that's why I had that episode about the Matrix, and that's why I had that. That's why I talk about the red pill and the blue pill. Once you realize you're a soul, you're like, why the fuck would I disrespect the vessel that I'm in, which is my body? Why would I vape? Why would I smoke cigarettes? Why would I drink alcohol all the time? Why would I eat shit? Why wouldn't I exercise? And on the flip side, why wouldn't I deal with my trauma, which is the knots in my soul that are keeping me stuck where I am? with the current lens in which I see the world through and the current reality that I live in. Why wouldn't I do that inner work so I can fulfill the reason that I was put on this earth and the reason that my soul is even put in this vessel in the fucking first place? Boom. I'm going to leave it there. That is my journey, part of my journey, 1/1000th of my journey with psilocybin. Hopefully some of these stories and some of my experiences and me sharing what I experienced, I didn't even need to think about this podcast at all. I literally just pressed record and start talking and just tell the truth. Exactly what I experienced, exactly how it's impacted my life, exactly the experiences I've had, and how it's helped me deal with my healing and my trauma and all the shit that everybody has. And I invite you, if you're still listening to this, if any of the things that have made you uncomfortable today and any of the stories that you start telling yourself through this episode, listen to them. They are defense mechanisms. Some of them are defense mechanisms. Some of the defense mechanisms to potentially stop you going down the same path, because part of you doesn't want to deal with this shit. Part of you likes exactly where you are. And that's why you're exactly where you are, because part of your identity is attached to these things that happened, and it doesn't want to change because it was designed to keep you safe. Your traumas create a defense mechanism to keep you safe. So as soon as you start questioning those things, it's like, I don't feel safe. Why would you question the safety of us, of me, of myself? So I invite you to explore that within yourself. I love all of you. I'm excited for this episode to come out. I've had people ask me about doing this for a while. People want to listen to this. People want to hear this stuff. And I hope this helps. And it's just coming straight from my heart. And hope it helps somebody. Love you guys. Bye.